Hello and welcome to the next reading from the book Christmas Carols from Village Green to Church Choir by Andrew Gant. Today, the 28th of December, if you're marking it, is the feast day of the Holy Innocents. So what I shall do, I shall read that particular carol set for today, which is Carol 18, Personent Hodie. Then what I shall do is read the other two carols set for feasting and making ready. O Christmas Tree, which I think is German for which is the English translation of O Tannenbaum, and the Holly and the Ivy. And then tomorrow I shall do I Saw Three Ships, O Little Town of Bethlehem, and in dulci, jubilo, or in dulci jubilo, because I've done All Come All Ye Faithful already. So firstly, let's go to Personent Hodie. And I've no idea what the English is for it, because it's in Latin. But luckily I know how to translate from Latin. I don't know how to translate from Latin into English. I used to know, but I do know more or less know the pronunciations for Latin. So firstly I'll read the carol and then read its history. I would sing it to you, but I can't really remember the tune, and plus I don't want my laptop failing, if you see what I mean. Personent hodie, voces puerulae, laudantes iucundae, qui nobis est natus, sumo Deo datus, est de vir, et de vir, et de virgineo ventre procreatus. I used to listen to this as a child, and it was one of my favourites, even though I couldn't understand a word of it. In mundo nascitur, panis in volvitur, praesepi ponitur, stabulo brutorum, rector supenorum, perdedit, perdedit spolia, princeps infernorum. Magi tres venerunt, pavulum inquerunt, Bethlehem adeunt, stellulam sequendo, ipsum adorando, aurum tus, aurum tus, aurum tus, et miram offerendo. Omnes clericuli pariter pueri, cartent ut angeli adveniste mundo, laudes tibi fundo, ideo ideo gloria in excelsis Deo. So let's look at its history, if I can find them. Yes, Carol 18. So it's got from Psalm 50, 60, 70, 80. That bit's from Psalm 89. 50, 60, 70, 80. Yes. Misericordias Domini in aeternum. It's aeternum. Cantabo in generatione et generationem annunciabo veritatem tuam in ore meo. It may appear slightly incongruous that one of the principal sources of English Christmas carols originated in Finland. The explanation lies in that most potent force in the shaping of human destinies, luck. But I think it was personally a blessing from God. The fact that this particular book survived came into the possession of a couple of English clergymen who then used it as a source for their own carol book, which in its turn survived and prospered, is the result of a series of coincidences and chance encounters. There is no particular significance in the Finnish connection. There is no evidence that Father Christmas owned a copy, nor that it was nibbled by reindeer. He does have a humorous side, as you can see, this author. This kind of song collection, mostly but not exclusively moral or devotional in character, was hugely popular in the European Renaissance period, part of the explosion of interest in education and ideals of behaviour, fuelled by the entrepreneurs of the new science of printing. There were thousands of such books. Most have vanished. Some will no doubt unvanish. Carmina Burana, perhaps 1,000 years old, lay undiscovered in a German monastery until the late 19th century. There are similar examples in all fields of music and literature. More are certainly waiting patiently to be excavated from library shelf and rood loft. Singing is a Protestant habit. Like so many similar publications, P.A. Cantiones begins with an earnest reminder that music exists to turn the mind ad cogitationem rerum divinarum, or, as the contemporary Englishman Thomas Morley put it, to draw the hearer by the ears, as it were, in chains of gold, to the consideration of holy things. The Lutheran Church put down deep and lasting roots in Scandinavia in the years around the publication of the P.A. Cantiones in 1582. But at the time, the old ways had not quite given up the ghost. Some of the texts are frankly Catholic in flavour, including two beautiful tender settings of the Ave Maris Stella, Hail Mary Star. There is a church in Lowestoft, not far from Norwich, where I am, which is dedicated to Mary, Star of the Sea. So, above all, it's a book of tunes. People like tunes. Suomalainen and his printer Theodore Petri of the district of Nyland knew their market. Other editions followed in Latin, Finnish and Swedish, new songs added along the way to maximise sales. They would surely have been thrilled, and probably rather astonished to hear so many of their songs being lustily bellowed out by English carolers 4 centuries later, as a direct result of their book. Here are Gaudete, made famous by Still I Span in the 70s, Gaudete Christus ex natus ex Maria Virgine Gaudete, Resonet in Laudibus, in dulci jubilo, macaronic but not as we know it, flitting fascinatingly between Latin and Old Swedish, Puer nobis nascitur, personent hodie, Tempus adet Floridum, which we know as Good King Wenceslas, which I read on Boxing Day, and the tunes we sing as Up Good Christian Folk and Listen, and Of the Father's Heart Begotten, among others. There is something thrilling about seeing these familiar tunes emerging from the square wooden typeface of Theodoric's press, and that, if I don't know if you can see it, is Puer nobis nascitur, which is one I just now quoted. Puer nobis nascitur rector angelorum. So the book includes a few songs in 2 and 4 parts. There is a passion setting and some good Old Testament blood and thunder. Judith Fortis, Hester Mortis. It's the sort of musical mixture of practicality and piety which would have been instantly familiar to young men and maidens, old men and children, all over Protestant Europe. Headmaster Suomalainen included some old favourites to get his pupils singing their little blonde heads off. Like Luther and Calvin and their English outriders, the singing Finns pinched the best tunes they could find from the devil, the Pope, I wouldn't class him as the devil, the pub, and from nowhere in particular. I see. It's pinched the best tunes they could find from the devil, the Pope, the pub, and from nowhere in particular. Personnant Hardier is probably one of the oldest, a good example of how a tune already weathered and seasoned by the time it made its way to Finland, on from there through the centuries to the choir stalls of Victorian England, and eventually to us. It is one of the very few carols we still regularly sing in Latin, although at the midnight mass in Rome I heard First Noel being sung in Latin. It is, and probably the oldest in which we sing tune and words as they were originally published together. Most of our carols consist of new words grafted onto old tunes, or old words grafted onto new tunes, vice versa, or both, not this one. The tune first appears in a written source in Germany in 1360, implying that it was already current then, and thus probably of even older origin. Like others in the Pie Cantiones, the tune betrays its roots in the medieval dance carol by a vigorous swagger that almost forces you to your feet. That's right, to stamp the snow off your boots and freeze your bloodless coldly. The gloriously wonky metrical pattern and rhyme scheme are unique and irresistible. Most striking is the repetition of a single syllable in line 6, et dear, where, etc. The modern scholars Andrew Parrott and Hugh Keate have an explanation for this engaging musical oddity. The text appears to be a version of an earlier poem in honour of St. Nicholas, which begins Intonent hodie voces ecclesiae. Nicholas, the Bishop of Myra and the provinces, was also patron saint of children, and among other notable achievements brought back to life 3 boys who had drowned, or, depending which version you read, been murdered then pickled. In the interests of equality, Nicholas went on to rescue 3 girls from a life of prostitution. In the earlier text, the repeated syllable coincides with mentions of the lucky children, sub me sum puerum, redens virginibus. The threefold repetition thus represents the 3 children each time. Perhaps there were some actions to go with it, a sort of mini-morality play or liturgical drama, or maybe a kind of canting song. The link with children survives in the voces puerulae of the 1582 version. So does the repeated syllable, even though the immediate putative textual reason for it has been left behind. But note carefully what the page of music actually says at this point in the tune. The first appearance of the repeated syllable, et der wir, has 3 repeated notes as expected. The second, at the end of the line, quite clearly only has 2. The syllable is sung first thrice, then twice, then once. Well, I used to hear it 3 times twice and then once, from what I can remember. And some later editors, but not all, changed it so that repetitions 1 and 2 are the same length. That's where I hear it from. making a nice regular little sequence. This is how we sing it today. Easier maybe, but the tune has certainly lost some of its lopsided charm. Note also that, rather sweetly, the printer has left out some of the words in the second verse, and someone has had to insert them over the top in pen. To find out how and why this wonderful melody has evolved and emigrated, the trail moves off piste somewhat, that's a ski slope, to Stockholm and Queen Victoria's Minister-in-Residence, G.J.R. Gordon. By the 1850s, copies of the Cantiones were extremely rare. Gordon was presented with a copy which had belonged to Peter of Nyland, and in turn gave it to Neil, John Mason Neil, and Helmore, that's Thomas Helmore. They respectively edited and arranged the music. And that is Personalmente Hodie from P.A. Canciones. They respectively edited and arranged the music and translated or replaced the words. The result was 2 books, Carols for Christmastide of 1853 and Carols for Eastertide of 1854. Each book contained 12 numbers, and the contents of both were later combined in a single simplified version. European scholars worked on the Cantiones in the 1880s, and another English clergyman, George R. Woodward, produced an excellent edition of the whole book in 1910, using a kind of halfway notation combining the old square note heads with modern clefs. Their instinct for a good tune started the transfusion of such much wonderful music into the bloodstream of the English carol singer. The title of the first published English version is significant. Neil and Helmore really did give us carols for Christmastide, not just for Christmas. We have already seen the rather dodgy link between Good King Wenceslas and Boxing Day, 26th of December. Personalmente Hodie, with its evocation of children singing, has become associated with 28th of December, the Feast of the Holy Innocents, and with the Epiphany, the 6th of January, where it fits with the tradition of St. Nicholas bringing gifts to children on that day. We can still just catch the vinegary aroma of pickled boy hovering vaguely around this carol. Neil also kicked off the favourite sport of coming up with English words for this tune. Poets and hymn writers have been unable to resist the challenge of finding rhymes to match the short lines and short syllables, and have had particular fun with the repeated word or bit of word. Neil's own version begins appropriately, "Let the song be begun." Holst's pupil, Jane Marion Joseph, published under the pseudonym James M. Joseph, a well-known translation beginning, "On this day earth shall ring with the song children sing to the Lord Christ our King." Elizabeth Poston begins by rhyming at the half-line, "Let the boys cheerful noise," but soon gives it up, "Sing today none but joys." Most translators cheat slightly at the end, treating the last few lines as a refrain, which they most certainly aren't in the original. Some even lapse pseudo-macaronically back into Latin at this point, which is perhaps to duck the issue. Neil keeps the original number of appearances of the repetitious monosyllable. "Sing of joy, 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 sing of joy, joy. Earth and skies bid it rise, Gloria in excelsis." So does Woodward in 1910. "Et de we're, et de we're, et de virgineo ventre procreatus." Holst made a special arrangement in 1916, sometimes known as Theodoric, taken by some authorities to be a reference to Holst's middle name, Theodore, but surely also a friendly nod to the printer of Highland. The syllable has sprouted a sixth sibling, ideo o, ideo o, ideo gloria in excelsis Deo. Joseph uses this same Latin refrain in her English version, complete with the spurious extra syllables stuck in the middle like a carrot on the face of a snowman. Fred Pratt Green's A more recent version begins, long ago prophets knew Christ would come born a Jew, and imaginatively turns the repeated syllable, including the spare, into a peal of bells. Ring bells ring, 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 sing choir sing, 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 when he comes, who will make him welcome? And I know that. I've heard that version sung before. P.A. Cantiones is a gem. We owe Neil and Helmore an incalculable debt for resurrecting these songs for us. Quite properly they did so according to the mores of their age. We are perhaps entitled to begin to respectfully scrape off the Victorian varnish and rediscover this wonderful music for ourselves. And that is that one. And I've read the Boar's Head Carol. So the next one is O Christmas Tree. And I shall read. I wish I had the German one down because I prefer it in German. O Christmas tree, how lovely are your branches. O Christmas tree, how lovely are your branches. Your boughs are green in summer's clime, and through the snows of winter time. O Christmas tree, how wonderful are your how lovely are your branches. O Christmas tree, O Tannenbaum. O Christmas tree, what happiness befalls me. O Christmas tree, what happiness befalls me. When oft at joyous Christmas time, your form inspires my song and rhyme. O Christmas tree, what happiness befalls me. O Christmas tree, your boughs can teach a lesson. O Christmas tree, your boughs can teach a lesson. That constant faith and hope sublime lends strength and comfort through all time. O Christmas tree, your boughs can teach a lesson. What on earth has something introduced to Britain by Prince Albert what on earth has that got to do with To Be a Christmas Carol? Let's see, shall we? So, this is Carol 4. Because they're part of a folk tradition, some carols can exist in different versions in different places at the same time. O Christmas Tree is better known today in America than in England. It got there with a little help from a family tree with many spreading branches of its own, including a Renaissance composer who lost his family in the 30 Years' War, German students bellowing Latin songs into their beer, and a 19th century poet and church organist. Among its cousins are an Irish revolutionary honoured by Lenin, the state of Maryland, Manchester United Football Club, this is tenuous, and the British Labour Party. Christmas carols have roots and offshoots in all sorts of unlikely places. To some, O Christmas Tree may not count as a carol at all. I don't think it does, personally. The words are a translation of a German poem beginning O Tannenbaum. But a Tannenbaum isn't specifically a Christmas tree. It's just a fir tree. Apart from this bit of creative mistranslation, the poem makes no reference to Christmas at all, and certainly not to anything remotely connected with the Christian story. I think the only thing I can think of is faith. The tree is used as an image of reliability and changelessness in a fleeting world. Also, the poem's status as a translation shows perhaps more clearly than any other Christmas song how an oral rather than a composed tradition never settles into a fine form. Nobody knows what the correct version is because there isn't one. The internet provides the perfect vehicle for revealing how this kind of dissemination by Chinese whispers works. Do a web search for the words of this song and you'll find, among much else, people looking for the words I knew in childhood, finding something a bit like what they remember but not quite, and asking if anyone out there knows the rest of the ones that go something like, "Oh Christmas tree, how lovely are thy branches. Oh Christmas tree, how dum-de-dum, dum-dum-dum, la 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 in summertime, la 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 in wintertime, oh Christmas tree," etc. Replies are many and various, but none quite matches the questioner's memory. The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. Recorded versions have all sorts of different sets of lyrics. Versions by artists as potent as Aretha Franklin and Alvin and the Chipmunks are alike in their basic theme and their key features, but quite dissimilar in detail. Does it matter? Not a bit. This is what an oral tradition is. The tune, on the other hand, first appeared in print in 1824 with the name of a perfectly sensible composer attached. It surely must be safe from being mangled by the funny tricks of time, at least as far as important details like the number of beats in a bar are concerned. Well, no. Never mind whether the pairs of quavers are dotted or not. Beneath the swooping strings and mooing horns under which this poor innocent little melody is so often buried, you can find versions with 4 beats to the bar instead of 3. Should we be surprised? Should we be bothered? Not really. When something like a tune is passed on by memory and by performers, it will both change and stay the same. The same is true of language. That's how it evolves. Happy Birthday to You started out in 4/4 time, and now it's in 3/4 time. So the version given at the end of this chapter, which I've already read, is the tune as first published in 1824 to the harmony given in the Yale Songbook with one of the more common current English translations. We pick up the story beneath a castle overlooking the river Etz in Bavaria, in the dangerous days of the early 17th century, and the composer Melchior Frank. Frank lived through a period of musical transition. His huge output, 600 motets, and many other works, combines the old-fashioned sound world of Renaissance composers like Lassus with the new polychoral style brought over the mountains from Venice, and local experiments like fugue and basso continuo. As well as his many learned compositions, Frank also wrote songs. In one of them he taps into an already well-established tradition in praising the humble and ubiquitous fir tree as an emblem of the natural world's comforting reliability and predictability, so unlike the world of man. And well he might. The area around Coburg where he lived was devastated by the violence and the political and economic degradation of the 30 Years' War. Many musicians lost their livelihoods. Returning armies brought typhus to the streets. Frank's wife and 2 of his children died. Frank's words begin, Ach, Tannenbaum, du bist ein edler Zweig. Du grünest uns den Winter, die lieben Sommerzeit. The noble branch stays green through summer and winter. Frank did not invent the idea of singing to a tree. Versions of the lyric exist as far back as 1550, 6 decades earlier. His poem is not the beginning of the story, it's a staging post. Medieval German students liked singing Latin songs. Like most things students do, they were sometimes regarded with a degree of disapproval, as Brahms found to his cost when he incorporated Gaudeamus Igitur, Let Us Therefore Make Merry, into his academic festival overture. Apparently not a very academic thing to do. One of these songs begins, Lauriger oratius quam dixisti verum, fugit euro sitius tempus edax rerum. The laurelled Horace is hymned for his willingness to kiss the girl, drink the wine, defy the tyrant time slipping through his fingers, and generally carp the diem. No wonder cloistered academics find themselves dabbing feebly at a disapproving brow. As usual, it is far from clear where this lyric comes from. It appears in print at the end of the 18th century, but it is impossible to be certain if it had been around for some time or had just been newly written. Naturally enough, the song then became a staple of student songbooks. It features regularly in editions of the celebrated Yale Songbook from 1858. From there, having entered the US, it goes on to become associated with other words, including the state song, Maryland, My Maryland. How did this tune get hitched to all these words, and what on earth has it all got to do with fir trees? Like the words, the tune is a creature with its origins in folk traditions and has passed through many hands and incarnations. It seems to first appear in print at the very end of the 18th century to yet another German text, Es Liebe Hoch. It appears without words in another printed collection at around the same time. Both appear to be based on the Lauriger Horatius song, which is itself probably a version of a Westphalian folk song. So both tune and words are part of a process of evolution from hazy folk traditions into something approaching the form we know today. They first got together shortly after the tune first appeared in print. Ernst Anschutz was a teacher, organist, poet and composer. He spent his whole life in Leipzig, plying his various trades there for 50 years. His poets were set as Lieder, and he wrote the libretto for a Singspiel by Karl Löwe, as well as an account of the death of the soldier Johann Wojciech, later turned into a play by Georg Büchner, and thence into an opera by Alban Berg. In 1824, Anschutz wrote and published a song, O Tannenbaum, wie treu sind deine Blätter, with a tune that is a simple piano harmonization of the familiar Lauriger Horatius melody. The carol we know today is born, sort of. But we still can't quite claim that we have our author, still less our composer. Anschutz hadn't written the first verse. He had taken it from a version published just a few years earlier by August Zarnack, who in turn may well have based it on another version of the folk lyric, beginning O Dannenbaum, another name for the modest little fir tree. Zarnack had turned the imagery of the tree's constancy into a song about a faithless lover, which meant Anschutz had to edit its verse first slightly to fit with his second and third verses. Subsequent verses may not be by Anschutz either, though it's not clear who, if anyone, did write them. As is so often the case with these carols, Anschutz's role was to join together strands from all sorts of existing traditions. He did a good job. From here the song spreads its branches across the world, with the growing popularity of the Christmas tree itself, famously popularised in England by another German import, Prince Albert. During the rest of the 19th century, the song takes its hallowed place around the domestic Christmas hearth. The English novelist Maria Singleton wrote in 1865, "Joyously did the little ones form a circle around that magic tree and gleefully rang their voices as they saluted it in the well-known strains of that ancient song, O Christmas tree, how lovely are thy branches." In 1879, John McElroy notes its popularity in America, calling the tune old and a familiar one to all college students. He gives part of a fine translation by Longfellow beginning O Hemlock Tree and points out that the O Maryland variant began as a rebel song before the Civil War. It is not the last time the tune is to be co-opted by the forces of violent revolution. Irving Bachella's 1911 novel Keeping Up with Lizzie puts the tune to rather more peaceful use. I was to dine with the Warburtons Christmas Eve and be Santa Claus for the children. The little captain of 3 years ran straight to Mrs. Bill and lay hold of her gown and partly hid himself in its folds and stood peeking out at me. She raised him in her arms and held him close, A great music box in a corner began to play O Tannenbaum, O Tannenbaum, wie grün sind deine Blätter. Well, it was the night of my life. Typically, printing lags behind oral transmission. English versions of the song first appear in print in the first decade of the 20th century, after which it becomes a regular feature of household songbooks and carol collections. In 1914, the song once again reaches out from Germany to the English-speaking world in the famous Christmas truce of that year, when, according to one soldier's diary, they all began clapping, and then they struck up another favourite of theirs, O Tannenbaum, and so it went on. First the Germans would sing one of their carols, and then we would sing one of ours. The tune has the memorable simplicity necessary for lasting popularity. 4 lines, lines 1, 2 and 4, all the same, a feature of so many familiar tunes. Line 3, a simple downward sequence. Sing it once and you know it forever. Its opening rhythm makes it eminently suitable for singing to all kinds of different words, as many budding wordsmiths have noticed. Any 3-syllable name with a tum-te-tum rhythm will do, from Field Marshal von Hindenburg to the Manchester United goalkeeper Edwin van der Sar. Oh, Van der Sar, oh, Van der Sar, we'll always love you where you are. I have heard Manchester United fans singing that. American place names fit particularly well. Oh, Maryland, my Maryland, or Florida, or Albany, or Michigan. You get the idea. The Red Flag is a revolutionary lyric by the Irish nationalist Jim Connell. Connell had wanted it sung to an old Jacobite tune, but it too got itself stuck to the Tannenbaum tune, becoming the unofficial anthem of the British Labour Party, sung annually at its conference by such red-knuckled sons of toil as Tony Blair and Ed Miliband, and the latest excuse, Keir Starmer. No doubt. The image of green shoots in the depth of winter is older than Christianity. This song, like so many, taps into something all the more profound for being unfathomably ancient. It is part of who we are, yet like us, and like the imagery we use to describe ourselves to ourselves, it has changed continually and changes still. And the third one, the holly and the ivy. So, I did cover it in my earlier series, but it needs investigating, this one. The holly and the ivy, when they are both full grown, of all the trees that are in the wood, the holly bears the crown. O the rising of the sun and the running of the deer, the playing of the merry organ, sweet singing in the choir. The holly bears a blossom as white as any flower, and Mary bore sweet Jesus Christ to be our sweet Saviour. The holly bears a berry as red as any blood, and Mary bore sweet Jesus Christ to do all sinners good. The holly bears a prickle as sharp as any thorn, and Mary bore sweet Jesus Christ on Christmas Day in the morn. The holly bears a bark as bitter as any gall, and Mary bore sweet Jesus Christ for to redeem us all. All those verses, those 4 verses I just read, have the refrain, oh, the rising of the sun and the running of the deer, the playing of the merry organ, sweet singing in the choir. So, holly standeth in the hall fair to behold. Ivy stands without the door, she is full sore, a cold. That's anonymous. Deck the hall with boughs of holly. Thomas Oliphant, English version of words to a Welsh New Year carol. Hi-ho, sing hi-ho, unto the green holly. Most friendship is feigning, most loving mere folly. Then hi-ho, the holly, this life is most jolly. That's William Shakespeare. Now the holly bears a berry as red as the blood. That's anonymous. Green growth the holly, so doth the ivy. Though winter blasts blow never so high, green growth the holly, that's Henry VIII. And down with the holly, ivy all, wherewith ye dress the Christmas hall. That's Herrick. In song like in the garden, ivy gets everywhere. So doth the holly. The potency of the imagery is clear. The shiny green leaves and bright red berries brandish a powerful message of new life in the dark midwinter wood. It's a short step to the image of the Christ child. Throw in all the mentions of cherries and berries, mistletoe and yew, juniper and box, and our Christmas tradition really does become, as a Dutch carol has it, een hoofken er schoon bloemken staan. I think that's right. A garden full of divers flowers. The humble holly bush and creeping ivy take their place among some of the oldest and strangest imagery in our collective lyrical memory, where the cycles of the natural world meet Christian ideas of birth, life, and death. Here, too, are the free ravens paying court to the dead night, and the fallow doe, as great with young as she might go, and the predatory falcon of the Corpus Christi carol, Lullaby, Lullaby, the falcon hath borne my make-away. The eyes of these creatures still peer at us from under our not quite made bed of modern civilization. A recurring idea in the songs of the holly and the ivy is the competition between them for preeminence. Of all the trees that are in the wood, the holly bears the crown. Nay, ivy, nay, it shall not be. Ewis, let holly have the mastery as the manner is. The first tree in the greenwood, it was the holly. Sometimes this takes the form of a wooing song or mating ritual, the holly representing the boy, the ivy the girl, and the holly always comes out on top, from which we will avert our attention with some relief. Their deep roots in this kind of imagery make these songs the perfect examples of how ancient pagan ideas have become assimilated, though not fully absorbed, into Christian iconography. The Church, naturally enough, has not always been happy about making house room for superstition and secular merrymaking. That favourite old celebrity, St. Nicholas, for example, carried all sorts of unwelcome associations in his sack. The Lords of Misrule, the ceremony of the boy bishop, which Norwich, my local cathedral, still does, and Twelfth Night revels. All good fun, but definitely not textbook Christian practice. In London on 5th of December 1554, the which was St. Nicholas' Eve at evensong time, came a commandment that St. Nicholas should not go abroad nor about. But notwithstanding there went about these St. Nicholases in divers parishes. Folk traditions are as tenacious as ivy. Much later, Cecil Sharp is making the argument in reverse, defending traditional songs against incursions by Christians and sticking up for the unconscious art of the peasant before his carols suffered from the intrusion of theological doctrine. Holly and ivy certainly received their share of such proselytizing attentions, welcome or otherwise. Some of these holly and ivy songs do not attempt to link their imagery to the Christian story at all. The contest of the holly and the ivy, for example, assigns various characteristics to each plant, or links them to some other species such as birds, the laverock for the holly, the owl for the ivy. The masculine-feminine duality runs throughout. Holly and his merry men, they dancen and they sing. Ivy and her maidens, they weepen and they ring. The holly and the ivy and its close cousin, the Sandsday Carol, by contrast, compare various aspects of Christ's life and ministry with some botanical peculiarity, often using a colour to symbolise the scriptural reference. Red for Christ's blood, white for his burial shroud. Which is true. The holly bears a berry as red as any blood, and Mary pours sweet Jesus Christ to do poor sinners good. That's from the holly and the ivy. Now the holly bears a berry as white as the milk, and Mary bore Jesus who was wrapped up in silk, the Sandsday Carol. Verses, of course, vary between versions. A number appeared in print in the century or so from about 1810. Cecil Sharp got his version from Mrs. Clayton of Chipping Camden, which he supplemented with parts of a slightly different text sung by Mrs. Wyatt of East Hartree in Somerset. Sharp also changed Mrs. Clayton's obviously incorrect last line of verse 2 on Christmas Day in the morn to match the versions printed by, among others, Stainer, Sylvester, and the Birmingham ballad seller Wadsworth. Incorrect or a local variant? Thus do Sharp, Clayton, Wyatt and Wadsworth all serve their function as editors of the text we have today. The refrain of this carol really needs to be considered separately. It doesn't quite fit. For one thing, the imagery suddenly takes a lurch inside. Up to now we have been entirely out in the woods among the bushes and briars. We stay there for the first two lines of the refrain, watching the sunrise and the deer run. Then suddenly we're in church, listening to an organ and a choir. It's an odd change of gear. Also, an organ is a man-made thing. The word in its meaning of a machine with pipes kept indoors dates from the Middle Ages. The phrase merry organ is used by Chaucer. Compared to the rest of the text, the reference is bizarrely modern. For all its relevance to holly, ivy, blood and fawns, our caroller might as well have told us he'd switched on his iPod. And it doesn't scan. The first two lines don't match the verses and the last two lines don't match the first two lines. The playing of the merry organ just won't fit the tune, whatever metrical and musical contortions ballad singers, editors and arrangers have put it through over the years. It doesn't rhyme either. Is this refrain actually part of the same poem? Has it at some point been altered from a metrically unexceptionable but theologically unsound original? There is probably a remnant here of an attempt to Christianise the lyric a little further than it really wanted to go. It's possible also that the refrain was appended at a later date to an existing poem, and that what we now know as verse 1 originally functioned as the refrain. This would explain the change of gear. There is another line of inquiry. Overleaf, which I'll now show you, are two ballad broadsides. Both were printed in Birmingham in the second and third decades of the 19th century. The first may be the earlier. They are among the earliest printed sources of this carol. Look carefully at the words of the refrain. The second broadside, on the right, has the playing of the merry organ as expected. The first, on the left, has the playing of the merry groan. The merry what? Is this a mistake? Is it a coincidence that groan is an anagram of organ? Did a careless printer or feckless printer's lad thinking about football or his girlfriend, instead of concentrating on his job, muddle up the metal letters as he hammered them into place ready for inkling? Was he dyslexic? Did someone proofread it for him and get it wrong? An early instance of the curse of the spell checker. And here we have them. So you've got the holly and the ivy now are both well grown. Of all the trees that are in the wood, the holly bears the crown. They're more or less the same. Now are both full grown of all the trees that are in the wood. One is D. Wrighton, 86 Snow Hill, Birmingham, and the other is by T. Bloomer, printer, Birmingham. There is another possibility. Groan might be correct. Is it a musical instrument, a slang or vernacular term, perhaps for some kind of bagpipe or drone or drum? It's an immensely appealing theory. It makes the lines scan perfectly. Groan is a half rhyme for sun, perhaps more than half in Birmingham, and what a fabulous picture it conjures up. Our carolling ancestor dancing round the holly bush in the moonlight, swigging his ale, singing this song and playing the groan. It doesn't matter whether we have any idea what a groan actually is or not. Just imagine it. Hear the sound of the merry groan. Good, isn't it? Yes, because the one on the left is the playing of the merry groan, and the one on the right is the playing of the merry organ. The tune, unlike the words, has not undergone much metamorphosis, apart from editors fiddling with the rhythms in an effort to get their particular choice of words to fit. The melody doesn't change between versions. It can't really. It's a simple little thing. Hints of possible ways to sing it might be gleaned from the phrase structure of the music itself. The distinctive rise in major 6 in the first two lines makes it work particularly well as a round, sung at 3 beats distance, like pealing bells. perhaps working best if the round stops after 2 lines of text. There are lots of rounds in folk music and children's songs. It's a great way to create instant harmony and make a song last longer. To take this idea a little further, the text of the Sands Day Carol is so similar to the Holly and the Ivy that it almost, in some respects, sounds like a smartened up version of the traditional original. Also, the 2 tunes can almost be sung together. Did one begin life as a sort of counter melody or descant to the other, or an alternative answering melody in a round? It would not be the only instance of such a process in English folk song. There is one alternative tune to these words, completely different in character, usually described as an Old French melody. It appears in print a number of times between 1870 and 1930, including in Stainer's collection. It hasn't remained in use, however, perhaps because the French flavour of the tune does not really match the feel and rhythm of the words, and makes even less effort to accommodate the pesky spare syllable inserted by the merry organist. If the Holly and the Ivy has a theological point, it's less to do with the Nativity than with what the Nativity led on to. Not so much that Mary bore sweet Jesus Christ, but that he came to do poor sinners good. Wedding these words solely to Christmas was always a marriage of convenience, which never quite succeeded in covering up some basic differences between the 2 partners, though it's been going strong for a good while now. And alongside the theology, of course, is a strong dose of the use of holly and ivy as decorations for the midwinter hall and home in the dark days around the solstice. Like the carol, the trees themselves look on towards Easter and spring. The holly hitherto did sway, let box now domineer, until the dancing Easter day or Easter's eve appear. And tomorrow, God willing, I will do I Saw 3 Ships, O Little Town of Bethlehem, and in dulci, jubilo. So, as always, may God bless you all. Amen.